Welcome back, csc235 class, to ex5-tipcalc. This is part 3, and what we're going to do next is work on our seeTip function, because we made two functions that basically make this number go up and down, and we use this parse float method here to make sure that tip percent stays a number, because we found out it wasn't a number when we went up. It was just adding numbers to the original number, not really doing math, but just throwing numbers at it. So we're going to have to remember that when we do other calculations in here from fields, and especially with this meal field, because even though we put in a number, it's going to get translated as a string, which isn't really a number, if that makes any sense. But let's start on our seeTip function. So we're going to make a new function after these two, and we're going to put our function keyword, and it's going to be called seeTip. That makes sense. It's kind of what we have so far. And I don't need a semicolon. I need a set of curly brackets. And inside of seeTip, we're just going to take it one thing at a time. And what we're going to do first is we're going to focus on getting a value from here, which was called total meal. And first of all, we have to get the value that's there, and then we're going to have to convert it to a variable so we can do some math with it. So we're going to do two things right off the bat, and then we're also going to have to make sure it's a number. So that's what we're going to do next. And to get a value from something, we could look at some of the other ones. Now this set a value. And if we want to get a value, that's a little different. We want to get the value that they put in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a variable, and the variable is going to be whatever value is put in there. So we're not setting something. We're not setting it to display. We're actually making a variable that's going to receive whatever input goes into there. So that's going to be a little bit different. So we're going to start right off with our variable, and we're going to say var. We're going to say var, and it's going to be total meal, and that's going to be equal to the value that the user puts in there. So I could just grab somewhere that has a value in here. Now I don't want to have equals twice, so you don't want to have a variable equals something, so you only want to go up to value here. So I'll just copy this, and I'll paste this here. And so the variable total meal is going to be basically set to whatever the value of total meal, the ID. This is the ID total meal. This is the variable total meal. So I'll call it total meal. And the value. And before we do anything else, I want to do the parse float here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to parse float total meal. So make sure that it stays a number, because right now it may not. And there's ways we could test that out, but let's just trust it for now that it's not really going to be a number yet. And actually, one thing you could do is I'm gonna comment this out, and right after this I'm gonna put console log. I always say console log, and in parentheses I'm gonna put total meal, so that it displays. And that means when we hit the seeTip button, it'll display the console log. It won't do anything else right now. And actually what I should do so it works, I should go up into my HTML, and I should make sure that I put the on click, and I could do this now, on click equals, and in quotes it'll be seeTip, like that. Make sure it has the parentheses. So that's going to be working. So that way, even though the function isn't really doing a whole lot yet, at least I could see the console log. And what the console is, I'll open it up so I could see it, and then I'll save this, and I'm just going to hit seeTip, and what it should do is it should show me the value of that variable. And let me put a number in here, like I'll just put in 100, and then I'll hit seeTip. And this is what I want you to see, that because it's in quotes, it's actually a string. It's not a number. Now if I actually had the parse float in here, I'll show you the difference, and I should put this console log after it so that it goes after we've done the parse float. If now I do a parse float, and I'll save it, and now let me put in a number, and I'll hit seeTip. Now you see it's a number. There it's a number, there it's a string, because of parse float. And that's going to mean a lot when we try to do calculations, because calculations with strings, won't do math. It'll just kind of put them together, or you'll get something blank. So it's very important that we kind of saw that, and that's console log. And it's just something you can use for yourself to kind of test things. It's like for debugging purposes. So that's good that kind of came up right now. So we saw that that's a string and that's a number in this orange color in CodePen. So we know that as long as we do that, we're keeping things as a number. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to get rid of console log right now. You could always put it back later, but I'll just get rid of it now because I think we're okay. We seem to be on the right track. And now that total meal is math, we're going to be able to do more math with it. Now, we got to be careful here because the math we're going to do, and I messed this up earlier myself, is I was just like adding this number to it, and what we actually have to do is make sure that our percent is a percentage and not a straight number. So it has to be 0.15, so it has to be times 0.01. So we're going to have to kind of reset our tip percent so that it actually works like a tip percent. So when we multiply, because our tip amount should really be the meal times this percent. So let's kind of look at that. Let's kind of look at tip amount, and let's make a variable for tip amount. And we're going to do var, and we're going to say tip amount, and tip amount is going to be equal to, remember, it's going to be the amount of the tip, so it's going to be tip percent, and it's going to be multiplied by total meal. If we did that now, it would be like, 15 times 100, which wouldn't be right. If we did that right now, it wouldn't be right. And actually, let's display the tip amount just so we know what's going on. So if we want to display something, we start with the document and make the value display. So I'm going to copy this and put this here and say in the area of tip amount, the value is basically going to be tip amount. So the value of tip amount is going to be in tip amount. That makes sense. And if we just do what we have so far, tip percent times total meal, but let's see what happens. So I'll put in 100. And I'll hit seeTip, and we don't want 1500. That's too much. We actually want 15% of that. So what we have to do is do the times 0.01. So I think just go here. We could do it right after here and just do times 0.01. We could do it right there. That should work. And let's just save it and see if it works right away. I'll put in 100 again. And now that works because that amount should be 15, because that's 15. 15% of 100 is 15. Instead of doing 100, let's do 50 just to see if we got that right. So that should be it should be like 750. So let's see if that works. And that's right, except we're only seeing one decimal place. We want 2 decimal places. So what we're going to do here for tip amount is we're just going to put a dot to fixed, and then in parentheses put a 2. That's an easy way here with it. We're just kind of appending to our variable and saying dot to fixed with a small t and a capital F and a 2 in parentheses, and that'll actually put our 2 decimal places after that. So then if we say it's $20, you have a $20 bill, and then you have 15% tip, it's $3 and it's 3.00. So now we're getting from the 2 fixed, we're getting that. So now for the last part of here, we're just going to add things up. So we're just going to add up our total charge is basically going to add up our tip amount and our total meal and come up to like 23. So we could do that right now, so that shouldn't be too hard. So we're going to set a variable for total charge. So we're going to do var total charge, and we're going to say it's going to be equal to tip amount with an underscore. And this is why it's important that these things are numbers and not strings. And we're going to say tip amount plus total meal. So those should both be numbers. And I'll put a semicolon here, so that should add it up, but it's not displaying it yet. Remember, we didn't display it yet. That's just adding it up. So if I want to display it, we have to use this thing to display it, and I'll copy the one right up here. This will display it, and it's going to be in the total charge area. So right here, this is going to be total charge. And our value is going to be total charge, and we could leave that at 2 fixed as well. So it shows up with 2 decimal places after, and we'll make that total charge. And now that everything looks okay, and I'll save it. And let's just throw something, let's throw 50 in here so we're not thrown off by the 15. So throw in 15. So this should be 750 plus 50. This should be 5750 if we're doing our math right here. So let's try this out. seeTip. 750, 50, 750. Let's try it at 10% because that should be. So now let's do seeTip, and that's $5, and then we're adding the 5 to the 10, that's 55. So things seem like they're working right here, so that's good. Now the only problem we're going to have is that if something doesn't get entered in there, we're going to get like a weird error. So if nothing's in here and we do seeTip, we're going to get that, not a number, because we're not getting a number in here. So we're going to have to fix that. But I think right now, I think our function's working okay. And again, just to review, we had to make variables and then display them, and make a variable and then display them. And then also in these cases, we've had to do something called parse float so that our numbers are working together as numbers. Now you might say, well, you didn't parse float total charge. And that's okay because we already had a number plus a number. So it's going to read a number. There's nothing that's going to read it as a string at this point because we're just adding two numbers together. So as long as they're already numbers, we're good. So we didn't have to parse float total charge. So everything's okay here. And what we're going to do for our last part is basically kind of just troubleshoot a little bit and then also make sure that we use a conditional statement so that if somebody doesn't enter something here, we kind of force them to, or we do a little alert message so that it tells them that they should put a number in here, reminds them. Otherwise, then it won't do anything. So we want to do that just to troubleshoot a little bit. But let's take a break here, and then we'll move on to our next part.